Throughout this season of Advent, this time of waiting for something worth waiting for, we've been committing ourselves anew to the care and stewardship of our planet. Today is the fourth and final segment in Recycling Advent with Devin and Emma. Just Devin today.
So for 4 weeks, we've been focusing on recycling. The first week, we learned about tanglers, plastic bags, and other stringy objects that jam up the machines. Last week, we focused on keeping our recyclables recyclable, empty, clean, and dry. This week, we're going to talk about your recycling service. First off, for most of us, our recycling is a contract between our municipality and the company that picks up our recycling and the material recovery facility that sorts our recycling. In the past few years, municipalities have gone from earning $25 per ton to paying $70 per ton or higher to process recyclables. These contracts are very complex. The MRF are predicting what they can sell and for how much. The cities negotiate what is acceptable material to change the price. And that's why so many of our municipalities no longer accept glass or colored glass. It's too expensive. These contracts last from 1 to a max of 3 years, so change can happen very fast. As a side note, an emerging trend is a 3-bin pickup system: trash, recycling, and organics, food and yard waste for composting. But not here yet. But back to our contracts. Recently, some contracts nationwide are including steep fines for truckloads with more than 10% contamination or non-recyclables. Keep in mind, the industry average is 25%. So what do material recovery facilities look like? Well, since we don't have slides today, I want you to close your eyes. First, picture a giant building where trucks drive in and dump their loads on the floor. Some big front loaders or construction machines scoop up the recyclables and load them into a hopper. And this hopper drops the materials slowly on a conveyor belt. This conveyor belt moves by workers who quickly try to remove the plastic bags and other tanglers that are going to jam up the machines. Next up are machines that sort by shape. All the 3-dimensional stuff gets separated from the flat or 2-dimensional stuff. The 3-dimensional stuff should be our plastic, our glass, and our metal. The 2D stuff should be our paper, our newspaper, our cardboard, and our paperboard. And this is why every recycling guide asks us to flatten or break down our paperboard or cardboard boxes. This 3-dimensional box is going to be sorted wrong and is going to become contamination on the 3D line. So our first takeaway is to flatten all your boxes. Now, following our 3-dimensional line, next there's super powerful magnets that suck out the steel metal cans, as well as special magnets that repel the aluminum and they jump off the line and into this special bin. Plastic sorting happens in an optical sorter. This machine reads the makeup of the plastic and uses little air jets to blow the plastic into the right type by bin. And this is my second takeaway. Don't stress too much on the plastic recycling. The machine's going to figure it out for you. Now, glass is either picked out by hand if they're trying to color sort it, separated by weight, or the stuff on the line is hit by something called a glass breaker so the glass can fall down for collection. At this point, what's left on our 3-dimensional line is garbage. Back on our 2-dimensional line, and honestly everywhere, the workers are the quality control, removing material that was missorted by the various machines and the screens. And contamination is a big deal. There are strict standards from China and others that cardboard, for example, can have no more than 0.5% of contamination, or the buyers will reject the load and send it back. Now, what does this mean for us? First, you might find some weird, quirky rules in your recycling guidelines because of your municipality's contracts or the nuances of the machines at your material recovery facility. For example, some machines can't handle squished plastic bottles, for example. And second, separate different materials. Together, these are garbage or contamination. But if you separate the cardboard from the plastic or the metal from the plastic, then they're recyclable. These are things I actually got out of people's recycling bins. My neighbors think I'm weird. Third, recycling is getting more expensive, and so anything we can do to lower the sorting costs and reduce contamination makes it more economically viable. And lastly, don't throw in just anything. The industry calls this wish cycling. I wish it was recyclable, so I'm just going to throw it in. When in doubt, throw it out. Or better yet, research. Read the fine print of your municipality guides. I know I gave you all easy guides and there's some more up on the board, but what we have done is I have gone on the church website, and at the bottom of the green sanctuary page is links to every municipality and the exact guide that they currently have on their website. Read it if you have a question, okay? And if it's not on the list, throw it out.
Today we are offering a Reader's Theater presentation of Charles Dickens' classic story, A Christmas Carol. As you may remember, Dickens was a Unitarian and wrote this story not to lift up one religious group's religious holiday, but to use the story of celebrating Jesus' birth as a catalyst for personal transformation and working for the good of all. Indeed, peace on earth, goodwill to all. Before we begin, I would like to express special appreciation to Dan Schroeder, who's covering music today and for the rest of the month, to our cast, who will be presenting this Reader's Theater, to Simon Connolly-Cumberland, who is our master of sound effects. And with all of these gratitudes and with great anticipation, we offer you A Christmas Carol. Actors, stave one. Marley was dead. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. But he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, gasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and harp as flint from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm him. No wintry weather could chill him. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was a cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had gone just 3, but it was quite dark already. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open that he might keep his eye upon his clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle.
It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew. He had so heated himself with rapid walking in the fog and frost that he was all in a glow. His face was ruddy and handsome. His eyes sparkled.
Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you.
Bah, humbug.
Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure.
Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Uncle.
Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep to mine.
Keep it, but you don't keep it. Come, dine with us tomorrow.
I'll see you in hell first.
But why? Why?
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry to find you so resolute, but I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
Good afternoon.
His nephew left the room without an angry word. He stopped at the outer door to bestow the greetings of the season on the clerk, who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge, for he returned them cordially. The clerk, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let two other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office.
Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night.
We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner.
At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comfort, sir.
Are there no prisons?
Plenty of prisons.
And the union workhouses, are they still in operation?
They are, still. I wish we could say they were not.
Oh, I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I am very glad to hear it.
Under the impression they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind and body to the multitude, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We chose this time because it is a time when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
You wish to be anonymous?
I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there.
Many can't go there.
And many would rather die.
If they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Seeing clearly that it would be useless to pursue their point, the gentlemen withdrew. At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived. With an ill will, Scrooge dismounted from his stool. The clerk instantly snuffed his candle out and put on his hat.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose.
If quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient. And it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound. And yet, you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wage for no work.
It's only once a year, sir.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier tomorrow.
I will, sir, on my word.
The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his waist, went down a slide on Cornhill at the end of a lane of boys, 20 times in honor of its being Christmas Eve, and then ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could to play at Blind Man's Bluff. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern and went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms in a lowering pile of a building. Now it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large. It is also a fact that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in the place. Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since his last mention of his 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker not a knocker, but Marley's face.
Oh, Marley's face!
As Scrooge looked at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again.
Pooh!
He closed the door with a bang. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs, trimming his candle as he went, for it was pretty dark. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. Nobody under the table, nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet, nobody in his dressing gown. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in. Double locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers and his nightcap, and sat before the fire to take his gruel.
Humbug!
His glance happened to rest upon a bell, a disused bell that hung in the room. It was with great astonishment and with a strange, inexplicable dread that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly at the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but it soon rang out loudly, and so did every other bell in the house. This might have lasted half a minute, but it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun, together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below. Scrooge remembered.
Ghosts in haunted houses are described as dragging chains.
The cellar door flew open. He heard the noise much louder coming up the stairs, coming straight toward his door.
It's humbug! I won't believe it!
His color changed, though, when, without a pause, it came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. The dying flame leaped up as though it cried, "I know him, Marley's ghost." Marley, in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent.
How now? What do you want with me?
Much.
Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Who were you then?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
You are fettered. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will, I wore it. Would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself?
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. At this time of the rolling year, I suffer most. I am here to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer. You will be haunted by three spirits. Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate.
Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over, Jacob?
Look to see me no more, and look that, for your own sake, you remember what has passed between us.
Scrooge awoke. It was so dark that looking out of bed he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber.
Why, it isn't possible that I can have slept through a whole day and far into another night.
Scrooge thought and thought and thought and could make nothing of it. He lay in this state until the chime had gone 3/4 more, when he remembered on a sudden that the ghost had warned him of a visitation when the bell tolled 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. Scrooge found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man.
Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
Who and what are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, you are past.
What business brings you here?
Your welfare.
I am much obliged by your concern, but perhaps a night of unbroken rest would have been more conducive to that end.
Your reclamation then. Take heed.
It put out its strong hand as it spoke and clasped Scrooge gently by the arm.
Rise and walk with me.
I am mortal and liable to fall.
Bear but with the touch of my hand here upon your heart, and you shall be upheld in more than this.
As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished. The darkness and mist had vanished with it, for it was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground.
Good heaven! I was a boy here. I could walk it blindfold.
Strange to have forgotten it for so many years. These are but the shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us. The school is not quite deserted. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still.
I know.
A door opened before them and disclosed a long, bare, melancholy room, made barer still by the plain deal forms and desks. At one of those, a lonely boy was reading near a feeble fire, and Scrooge sat down upon a form and wept to see his poor, forgotten self as he used to be.
Let us see another Christmas time.
Scrooge's former self grew larger at the words, and the room became a little darker and more dirty. He was alone again when all the other boys had gone home for their jolly holidays. He was not reading now, but walking up and down despairingly. Scrooge suddenly looked towards the door. It opened, and a little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in. She threw her arms about his neck and kissed him again and again.
Dear brother, I have come to bring you home, dear brother. Home for good and all. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. And you're to be a man and are never to come back here. But first we be together all the Christmas long and have the merriest time in all the world.
Always a delicate creature, whom breath might have weathered, but she had a huge heart.
So she had. You're right. She died a woman, and had, as I think, children. One child.
True. Your nephew.
Yes.
At that moment, they left the school behind them. They were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here, too, it was Christmas time again. But it was evening, and the street lights were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain door.
Do you know this place?
Know it? I was apprenticed here.
They went in. An old gentleman in a Welsh wig was sitting behind such a high desk that if he had been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling.
Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless his heart, Fezziwig alive again.
Yo ho, my boys. No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas Eve, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up before a man can say, Jack Robinson, hilly-ho! Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here.
The floor was swept, the lamps were trimmed, and the warehouse was snug, warm, and dry, and as bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. There were dances and more dances, and there was cake, and there was a great piece of cold roast and mince pies and plenty of beer. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Scrooge's former self turned down the lamps, and the cheerful voices died away. Scrooge and the ghost again stood side by side in the open air.
My time grows short. Quick.
This was not addressed to Scrooge or to anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect. For again, Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of his life. His face had not the harsh and rigid lines of later years, but it had begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. There was an eager, greedy, restless motion in the eye, which showed the passion that had taken root, and where the shadow of the growing tree would fall. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress, in whose eyes there were tears.
Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve.
What idol has displaced you?
A golden one. You are changed. But if today, tomorrow, I can believe you would choose a dowerless girl, I release you, with a full heart for the love of him who you once were. May you be happy in the life you have chosen.
And so she left him.
Spirit, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me?
I told you these were the shadows of the things that have been. They are what they are. Do not blame me.
Take me back. Haunt me no longer.
Scrooge was conscious of being exhausted and of being in his own bedroom. He barely had time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. Scrooge felt restored to consciousness in the right nick of time. Now, being prepared for almost everything, he was not by any means prepared for nothing. And consequently, when the bell struck 1 and no shape appeared, he was taken with a violent fit of trembling. He got up softly and shuffled in his slippers to the door.
Come in.
It was his own room. There was no doubt about that. but it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened. In easy state upon his couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see.
Come in and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You have never seen the likes of me before.
Never.
Touch my robe.
Scrooge did as he was told and held fast. All vanished instantly, the room, the fire, the ruddy glow, the hour of night. They stood in the city streets on Christmas morning. Scrooge and the spirit went on, invisible, into the suburbs of the town, straight to Scrooge's clerk's house. Mrs. Cratchit, Bob Cratchit's wife, dressed out but poorly in a twice-turned gown, was laying the cloth, assisted by Belinda Cratchit, while Master Peter Cratchit plunged a fork into a saucepan of potatoes. And now 2 smaller Cratchits, boy and girl, came tearing in, screaming that outside the baker's they had smelt the goose. And basking in the luxurious thoughts of sage and onion, these young Cratchits danced around the table.
What has ever got your precious father, then? And your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha wasn't as late last Christmas by half an hour.
Here's Martha, Mother. Hurrah! There's such a goose, Martha.
Why, bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are. Never mind, so long as you are come. Sit ye down before the fire, my dear, and have a warm.
There's Father coming.
And how did Tiny Tim behave?
As good as gold and better. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made the lame beggars walk and the blind men see.
Such a bustle ensued that you might have thought a goose the rarest of birds. At last the dishes were set on and grace was said.
For what we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful. Amen.
Amen.
At last the dinner was all done. The cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up.
A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us.
Happy one.
Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population.
Scrooge bent before the ghost's rebuke and cast his eyes upon the ground. But he raised them speedily on hearing his own name.
Mr. Scrooge, I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I'd hope he'd have a good appetite for it.
My dear, the children, Christmas Day.
It should be Christmas Day, I am sure, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge.
My dear, Christmas Day.
I'll drink to his health for your sake and the day's, not for his. Long life to him. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
By this time it was getting dark and snowing pretty heavily, and as Scrooge and the spirit went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fire in the kitchens, parlors, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. Scrooge was surprised to recognize his nephew's hearty laugh and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room with the spirit standing smiling by his side and looking at that same nephew with approving affability.
He said that Christmas was a humbug, as I live. He believed it, too.
More the shame for him, Fred.
I'm sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Here he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He loses some pleasant moments, which could do him no harm. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him.
It was a long night, if it were only a night, but Scrooge had doubts of this, because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older.
Are spirits' lives so short?
My life upon this globe is very brief. It ends tonight. At midnight, hark, the time is drawing near.
Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like the mist along the ground towards him. Slowly, gravely, silently, the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. Its mysterious presence filled Scrooge with a solemn dread.
I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?
The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand.
You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not yet happened, but will happen in a time before us. Is that so, Spirit?
The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him.
Lead on. Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me.
They scarcely seemed to enter the city, but there they were, in the heart of it, amongst merchants. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk.
No, I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
Why? What was the matter with him? I thought he'd never die. And what has he done with his money?
Well, left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know. It's likely to be a cheap funeral, for upon my life, I don't know of anybody to go to it.
Scrooge and the Phantom left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of the town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, and although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. A woman with a heavy bundle slunk into a shop. The woman threw her bundle on the floor and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool.
Open that bundle, Joe, and let me know the value of it.
But a man in faded black produced his plunder first. It was not extensive, a seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value were all. They were severely examined and appraised by old Joe, who chalked the sums he was disposed to give for each upon the wall, and added them into a total. Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots. Her account was stated on the wall in the same manner.
And now on to my bundle, Joe.
Joe went down on his knees and dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff.
What do you call this? Bed curtains? You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, with him lying there?
Yes, I do. Why not?
What's this? His blankets?
Well, who else's do you think? He isn't likely to take cold without him, I dare say.
I hope he didn't die of anything catching, eh?
Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. The scene changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay something covered up. Scrooge glanced towards the Phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head.
Spirit, I understand you, and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. Let me see some tenderness connected with a death, or this dark chamber will be forever present to me.
The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the mother and children seated round the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues. The mother laid her work upon the table.
The color hurts my eyes. It makes them weak by candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home. It must be near his time.
Past it, rather, but I think he's walked a little slower than he used to these past few evenings.
I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim on his shoulder very fast indeed. But he was very light to carry, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble. And there is your father at the door. You went today then, Robert?
Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. I would have done you good to see how green the place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him I would walk there on Sunday. Oh, my little child. However, and whenever we part from one another, I am sure that none of us shall forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we? Or this first parting among us.
Spirit, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead.
The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him to a churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge advanced toward it, trembling.
Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only?
Still, the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and followed the finger and read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name.
Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed? No, Spirit. Oh, no, no. Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. Why show me this if I am past all hope? Good Spirit, assure me that I may yet change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. I will live in the past, present, and future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
And there began an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes, the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room his own.
They are not torn down. They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here. I am here. The shadows of things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything.
Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist. Clear, right, jovial, stirring, cold, golden sunlight. Heavenly sky, sweet, fresh air, merry bells.
Oh, glorious, glorious. You, boy, what's today?
Eh?
What's today, my fine fellow?
Why, today, it's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner?
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging there? The big one.
What? The one as big as me?
What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck.
Yes, it's hanging there now.
Is it? Go and buy it. Oh, and tell them to bring it here that I may give them the direction to where to take it. Come back with the man and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy was off like a shot.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sent it.
He dressed himself all in his best and at last got out onto the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present. And walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting house the day before. It sent a pang across his heart to think how this gentleman would look upon him when they met. But he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it.
My dear sir, I hope you succeeded yesterday. Allow me to ask your pardon, and you have the goodness...
Here Scrooge whispered in his ear.
Lord bless me! My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?
If you please, not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you.
Scrooge walked about the streets. In the afternoon, he turned his steps toward his nephew's house. A maid answered the door.
Is your master at home, my dear?
Yes, sir.
Where is he, my dear?
He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs if you please.
Thank you. He knows me. I'll go in here.
He sidled his face around the door.
Why, bless my soul! Who's that?
It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?
Let him in? It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. Nothing could be heartier. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon, and he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1:15. No Bob. He was a full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come into the tank. Suddenly, Cratchit was there. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away the pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Hello. What do you mean by coming here this time of day?
I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time.
Yes, you are. Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please.
It's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir.
Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I am going to raise your salary.
Sir?
A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. Bob, make up the fires and buy another coal shuttle before you dot another I, Mr. Cratchit.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, But he let them laugh and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good at which some people did not have their fill of laughter at the outset. And knowing such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. It was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that truly be said of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Take it back. Thank you so much, and we had such fun presenting A Christmas Carol to you. We're going to join our voices in song as we sing hymn number 244, verses 1, 3, and 4 of It Came Upon the Midnight Clear, written by Universalist Edmund Hamilton Sears.